The most beautiful Roman coin ever made was made by a complete nobody, a man called Postumus, in the year 260 AD. He wasn't even emperor, he was a usurper, and for some reason he made gorgeous coins. Large bronzes, high purity silver coins at a time of falling silver quality, and he made this breathtaking gold aureus in which his three-dimensional portrait pops out of the coin and gently looks at you, the viewer, with this relaxed, nearly messianic look, as if a hero coming to save Rome at its time of need. Ultimately, Postumus rose by the sword and died by the sword, becoming simply a footnote in Roman history. And then we have this. Well, compared to the previous coin, this one will not win any beauty contests. You might guess this was made by an even less relevant historical figure, but instead of being issued under a nobody, this coin was made under Justinian the Great, the most famous of all Byzantine emperors, famous for trying to restore the great Roman Empire of old, for codifying Roman law, building the Hagia Sophia. He's got a list of accomplishments. He really was a great emperor, and he ruled over a genuinely powerful and prosperous empire. The Eastern Romans enjoyed all of the advanced technologies and art we associate with the Rome of the golden 1st and 2nd centuries. They had houses with plumbing, central heating systems, aqueducts, urbanized cities, a powerful army, beautiful art, you name it. But yet, how can such an important emperor from such a powerful empire strike these ugly coins? And here's where we see a wave of people coming to conclusions like, Christianity ruined everything. The fall of the West collapsed the world for 1,000 years. After Rome, civilization and art never recovered. This kind of conclusion based on so little evidence is very common today, and frankly, it's just lazy and dumb. The Postumus and the Justinian coins are separated by exactly 300 years. Based on this assumption, we could do a parallel experiment in which you get something like a modern-day British coin and a coin from 300 years ago, struck under George I, and try to draw conclusions on how good life was then and now, simply based on the coin. Because you know what? The coin from 1726 is actually superior. They were mostly made out of precious metals, today's coins are not, making the older coins intrinsically more valuable. The older coins also had much more intricate art compared to today's simpler style, designed basically for durability. So I guess we can conclude based on the coins that we're living in complete societal collapse, and it would be better to be a peasant in 1726 Britain compared to a normal guy today. Well, we know that's not the case. However, the point still stands. Let's go back to this gold solidus here. So, this coin's art doesn't seem to do justice to the empire that made it. So why are Byzantine coins so ugly? Why did a separatist empire fighting against their fellow Romans and barbarians on the frontiers in such a precarious situation manage to make coins of such superior artistic merit, while this stable, powerful empire of the early Middle Ages made such cartoonish-looking coins? You see, coins were mass-produced, and anything that is designed to be made on such industrial scales needs to follow different rules compared to a piece of art. And to understand these mass-produced goods, let me present you to Rome's first industrial designer, Marcus Vitruvius Pollio. Well, he was actually an architect, but a very unique one. Vitruvius lived during the 1st century BC, in the final decades of the Republic, so around the time of Julius Caesar and Augustus. And one of his great works was De Architectura, or On Architecture, translated to English, one of the most influential books ever written on the subject. In this book, Vitruvius introduced one of the most famous ideas in architectural history, that a good building should possess 3 fundamental qualities: venustas, utilitas, and firmitas. Venustas basically means beauty, charm. It is the quality that makes a building pleasing to the eyes. It's this I don't know what that makes people stop, admire something, and feel that whoever built this building, they did it with virtue in their heart, a desire to do a good job. Then we have utilitas, which means usefulness. A building has to actually do what it was made to do. A temple has to have the necessary facilities for rituals to happen. A bathhouse needs to have like all of the necessary elements for a typical Roman bath to function. Stuff like different kinds of hydraulic systems, water heating and cooling systems. A house has to provide the security and the comfort for a family to live and prosper. You get the idea. And finally, firmitas means firmness, but not simply in the sense of like structural integrity. It means something closer to resilience. A building with firmitas is able to resist the adversities that would otherwise prevent it from serving its purpose. The Colosseum, for example, used to have a retractable roof system that could provide shade against the sun and protection against the rain, allowing the spectacle to continue even when the weather itself was trying to interrupt it. This was firmitas. And what made Vitruvius a genius is that in reality his concepts of venustas, utilitas, and firmitas went much deeper. This triad is not merely a checklist of requirements. It's not just Vitruvius saying like, make this building pretty, make it useful, and make it resilient. What he meant was more subtle. These three things are properties that emanate from any building. In fact, these properties emanate from any object. They are qualities that emerge from the object itself, from its design, from the people who use it, and from the world in which it exists. Pay attention particularly to this last part, to the world in which this object exists in. So let's once again use the example from the Roman house, the domus. If you walked through the streets of a Roman city and looked at the exterior facade of a wealthy man's house, you might be surprised by how plain it could be. In many cases, the outside of the house was not covered in any decoration. It did not have like what you would expect from a wealthy man's house, right? A beautiful open facade filled with windows, ornaments. Quite the opposite. From the street, the domus could look like a huge block with very few tiny windows, and it was all rather boring looking. Doesn't this go against the idea of venustas? Where's the beauty? Where's the desire to please? But that is precisely the point. The venustas of the domus manifested itself where it mattered. The house was not designed to please the random passerby walking outside. It was not a public monument. It was not an amphitheater. Like an amphitheater had to be pretty, not your house. The domus, it was a private world. Its beauty was directed inwards. Once you entered the domus, then you could find the decorated rooms, the painted walls, the mosaics, the gardens, fountains, this finely curated and very pleasant environment. The exterior could be plain because the exterior was not where the beauty of the house was supposed to live. Venustas, the application of beauty, goes where it is appreciated. And we could look at this plainness under the optics of utilitas. The boring outer facade and the lack of windows, they were useful. They helped keep the people inside comfortable, protected, and separated from the chaos of the streets. Its blandness had utilitas for, of course, security reasons. It was meant to keep jealous eyes from the outside from looking in, as Roman cities were very low-trust environments. And finally, the domus had firmitas. The exterior walls, once again, they were bland and meant to keep people out, but they were also the thickest and better insulated. The domus had very few external entrances, and these were designed in a way that the interior of the house was easily defensible and guarded from invaders. And once you were inside, the firmitas manifested itself, because these houses had as many utilities as they could afford crammed inside, so people had less reasons to go outside at the unpleasant street. A Roman domus had its own kitchen, latrines, offices, dining rooms, reception rooms, rooms for guests, gardens. It was like this little self-contained little paradise. And where am I getting at with all of this? Where do ugly Byzantine coins fit in all that I'm telling you? So, you see, in reality, Vitruvius was doing something much deeper than writing about buildings. He wrote the first universal theory of product design, of how beauty, usefulness, and resilience emerge from the purpose an object is meant to serve. This is very close to the modern idea that form follows function. The shape of an object, the way it looks, the materials used to make it, the message it communicates, and even the kind of beauty it possesses or lacks are all connected to what that object is actually supposed to do in the real world. And with that in mind, we can finally return to the coin of Postumus and Justinian and look at them, not simply asking ourselves like which one is prettier, but asking what each coin was actually made to do. Let's look at Postumus first. He rose to power during one of the most unstable moments in Roman history, with emperors rising and falling every few years, and every new ruler had to constantly justify why he should rule. His succession was built around the defense of the western provinces, especially Gaul and the Germanic frontier, which the Central Empire was struggling to protect. So he succeeded, created a new state, but this new Gallic Rome was quintessentially Roman. It had Roman institutions, Roman titles, Roman administration. Postumus was not saying, I am something different from Rome. He was more of a make Rome great again type of guy. And this is where his coinage becomes so important. Postumus made a very intelligent political move. He used higher quality coins to present himself as the better ruler. At the time of his usurpation, the Central Empire was issuing miserable looking coins with very little silver, around 12.5% purity. Postumus, on the other hand, struck coins that looked and felt superior, around 20% silver. He had access, and he could do this because he had access to the resources of the western provinces, including the mines of Hispania, and he used that advantage to issue gold and silver coins of remarkable quality. So he weaponized utilitas and venustas by making coins better and putting a disproportionately high effort of making them beautiful, effectively telling his people, the people who would handle the coins, my rule is stable, my regime is competent, even my money is better. And apparently people believed it. Postumus reigned for nearly 9 years, arguably the most successful of Rome's usurpers, and the number of posthumous coins that have survived to our days suggests that many people hoarded them for their superior quality. Therefore, we can come to the conclusion that this wonderful gold aureus of him is more akin to a propagandistic nuclear bomb. Imagine if a Roman senator, already with his trust on the emperor kind of frail, imagine if he got a hold of such a coin and compared it against some of the lightweight, around half the weight of the aurea issued by Postumus, and lower fineness gold issues of Gallienus, the quote-unquote true emperor. Sadly, I couldn't find an image of the reverse of this coin. It is part of the collection of the Bibliothèque Nationale, France's most important public numismatic institution, which just shows how bad of a job most museums do at conserving and presenting their treasures. However, fortunately, based on similar aurea issued at the same time, including this other facing bust Postumus we have here currently at the British Museum, we can estimate that this, what you see here, was the reverse of our original coin, as this reverse seems to repeat itself on many other gold pieces. And on it, we have the coup de grâce, Postumus's last argument that he should be taken more seriously than Gallienus. We have another wonderful facing portrait of Postumus, different style but still very well accomplished. Calm, very calm, looking at you on the obverse, and on the reverse you can see Postumus sitting on a consul chair with the reverse legends. That would translate something to like the leniency, the forgiveness of our pious Postumus, the emperor. He's openly telling everyone, if you too leave the emperor and join my bigger, better Rome, you will be pardoned and welcomed. This is a masterclass in political propaganda. No wonder he made such pretty coins to make sure his message was seen, and it was effective. So let's go back to our Byzantine coin. Now, with everything we have learned in mind, we can reevaluate in a much more interesting way this coin. Justinian was also a Roman emperor, yes, but a Roman emperor of the 6th century was something very different from an emperor of the early empire. Back then, the 1st and 2nd centuries, for example, the emperor might have been an extraordinary man, someone surrounded by glory, by divine favor, but he was still presented as a man. His face mattered, his individual image mattered. The coin had to show you the man. It had to show you Hadrian, Marcus Aurelius, Postumus, with their own personal flair, because the person of the emperor was still central to his idea of legitimacy. But by the late Roman and Byzantine periods, this was different. The emperor had become an institution, almost an icon of the Roman state itself. And with the stronger role of Christianity in imperial power, the emperor's image became even less personal. He was not merely Justinian, the man. He was the God-appointed ruler of the Romans, the earthly instrument of divine order. His individual personality faded into something much larger. Emperor, church, the state, all fused into like a single image of sacred authority. That's what you're seeing here. Now, mind you, this change happened over centuries. It came before Christianity rose to prominence. Emperors like Aurelian already advertised themselves as connected to Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, a pagan god. Diocletian is one of the responsibles for this change in imagery. He established the idea of the unreachable emperor, and he did so based on a purely pragmatic way of improving his grasp on power. He didn't do this for religious conviction or piety, let alone Christian piety. He's famous for persecuting Christians, and Diocletian's coins reflect this. Put side by side a coin of Diocletian and another one of his co-emperor Maximian, and you wouldn't be able to distinguish one emperor from the other based on the portraits alone. Understanding this, now our ugly little gold solidus actually makes perfect sense. It does very well what it is meant to do. This was supposed to be a coin of very high quality gold, nearly pure, struck in very consistent weight, which it was for centuries. The Byzantines operated mostly on a gold standard, so the absolute first demand of this coin was for it to be a trustworthy, standardized piece of gold for paying troops, paying your taxes, and for trade, which it was. And it had to be very clear, easy to understand, like a message that was easy to understand of this sovereignty of the Eastern Romans, like the whole state. The actual individual facial features of the emperor mattered very little, so they weren't put on the coin. What mattered was that you knew that there was an emperor, he ruled under unquestionable divine favor, which you see in the coin, with like his royal regalia, the religious symbols all over the place, and that you could trust his gold. Remember our triad from Vitruvius? A Byzantine solidus was primarily a coin that manifested utilitas and firmitas. It had a very practical nature, and its high-quality gold and simple-to-understand messages gave it lots of firmitas. And where could you see true Byzantine art, true Venustas manifesting itself in its Byzantine flavor? Through the things that actually mattered in their political world, through Hagia Sophia and sacred art, through grand architecture, through mosaics, through imperial ceremony. If you want to see the artistic quality of Justinian's empire, you look at where Venustas was required in their case, and there the quality was undeniable. Byzantine art was not bad. It was not a world that had forgotten beauty. It was a beauty that served a different purpose. If we look at Byzantine mosaics, we immediately see that this was not a civilization incapable of realism. We see individualized faces, carefully arranged figures, folds in the clothing, a sense of depth with the use of different shades of colors in the beads, and enough three-dimensionality to connect this art to the great mosaics of earlier imperial Rome. The quality is there. In fact, beauty, Venustas, makes a comeback on coinage every now and then. During the reign of Justinian II, we see the introduction of the portrait of Christ on coins, which will continue for many years. And here we see a very interesting mix. Check out the solidus, such a fascinating coin. We have on the obverse, mind you, the place reserved for the sovereign, not the emperor, but Christ, and he is clearly made in superior style. If we compare him to the emperor on the reverse, the emperor is in this schematic, uncharacterized full body image. The emperor is a symbol. Christ is not. He holds his gospel. He makes his hand gesture of blessing. You can see his long beard, his long hair. These were all connected to the image of Christ, the man they had in their culture. So even if you think all of my argumentation that Byzantine beauty manifested itself in a different way, it's just a cope to cover for their failing art, well, here it is. Beautiful, personalized portrait on coins. In fact, individualized portraits aren't an exclusivity of Christ alone. Coins featuring the delicate portrait of Mary are also relatively common in this time. The image of the emperors and empresses seems to gain a bit more visual quality as well during this time, but interestingly, as you analyze more of these coins, you notice that there was a special care given to make sure that Jesus or Mary were really the ones who had the clearly individual image. The secular monarch was always like, they gained a bit of individuality in their portraits, but never as much as the divine monarchs, showing a degree of sensibility to the message, of fine-tuning the different elements of the design that is really remarkable. And you know what? What if we leave gold? How about the pocket change? Were low-value coins just as ugly? The best way to conclude this argument, funnily enough, is for me to show you my ugliest Byzantine coin. I love this little guy precisely because it is so cartoonishly bad. This is a decanomium of Maurice Tiberius. He ruled a few decades after Justinian I, and as we can see here, well, this is pretty bad. No effort was made to produce a round coin. This coin was most likely born out of a sheet of copper and someone cut the flan out using a chisel, I don't know. Sometimes they also recycled old coins as well, but instead of melting them down and casting new blanks, they just cut the coins up and restruck the pieces. And I mean, what is this portrait? It's absolutely schematic. It isn't even struck very well. We can see the strike was uneven, so parts of the entire design were not imprinted on this coin's surface. And as we go to the reverse, it's more of the same basic functional design. We have a denomination mark that dominates the center, this large iota. This is the Greek letter for the numeral 10. So this is a denomination, 10 numi. At the top of it, there's a cross, symbol of authority. To the left and right, there are some control marks, probably added by the mint as some kind of quality control, which is kind of ironic. And at the very bottom, the mint mark, the sign that this coin was made in Constantinople. But the thing is, everything here makes absolute sense. Nobody was supposed to look at this coin and expect to gather information on who the ruler was, what he had to say or anything. This was a purely functional object. It had to show you that it was made under some kind of imperial authority, hence the image of an emperor on the obverse. If you handled this kind of low-value money on a daily basis instead of gold, you certainly had no political importance, so you didn't have to know that what the emperor looked like. And all you really needed was to have a coin that had the right quantity of metal in it, which this coin has. It's not important if the coin was round or not, it's all about the metal, and you had to have 2 more pieces of information provided to you. How much it was worth, hence the denomination mark on the reverse, and the Constantinopolis at the bottom, which shows this coin comes from an imperial mint, which is what separates this coin from a lump of metal. And at the end, that's it. Anything else was unnecessary because nobody was paying attention or suffering from a lack of refinement in this coin. And just to illustrate how this form follows function component can be applied to Roman coins from their golden age, we have this little guy here, which also isn't much to look at, but hey, it was issued under the great Augustus himself. This is a semis issued at a Roman colony called Iulia Traducta in modern-day Spain. Let's ask ourselves the question, what's the objective of this coin? Iulia Traducta was founded around 20 BC. It was founded as a new colony for retired Roman legionaries. And since these were new lands conquered by the Romans, They knew they had a series of tasks they needed to do, namely monetizing this region, making sure there was money going around. They needed to reinforce the authority of the emperor in the region. After all, it was a new frontier. And they had to ensure the loyalty of these colonists. So all of the elements of this coin are made with these objectives in mind. We have a very clearly visible portrait of the emperor, not incredibly realistic or detailed because of probably logistical constraints. As I said, this was a newly conquered region. They had to show the emperor to these people, so the images and references to the emperor had to be very explicit, and the coin had to be of a minimum level of quality and similarity to what these new colonies, these retired legionaries, were accustomed to, which were the high-quality coins made by the Rome Mint. This explains every aspect of this coin. The image of the emperor is of around the same quality as the small denominations from the Italian mints. The legends are in Latin, that's the language the colonists spoke, and it reads Permissio Caesar Imperator, so reminding them that Augustus himself gave them the rights to strike coins and to live in this place. And on the reverse, we have an appeal to their cultural ties to Rome. We have the priestly implements that they would have used in their religious ceremonies, and the name of their new city, which is put here not only to identify where the coin was supposed to circulate, but also reminding these people that they were a citizen of Julia Traducta now. Once more, everything you see here has a reason. If it is prettier than the previous coin, it has a reason to be prettier. So, conclusions. Are Byzantine coins ugly? They are absolutely not. They are misunderstood. I'm not here to force you to collect them, but I hope I passed across the point that the ancient world was a place of brutal scarcity. It was a world of want, human labor was scarce, material goods were scarce, so nothing was done without a reason behind it, and that includes the presence or lack of beauty in an object. Remember, venustas, utilitas, and firmitas. And if you would like to know more about numismatics and you would like to learn how to collect ancient coins, you should definitely subscribe to my newsletter, where I share free weekly tips on how to collect ancient coins. Also, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss another episode. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like and consider subscribing if you did. Happy collecting, and I'll see you soon. Let me give a special thank you to all of my amazing channel members and Patreons for their generous support. This channel would not be the same without your help. And if you would like to be part of this list, have early access to my videos when they are uploaded to YouTube, and a series of other perks, make sure to check out my Patreon page and my members tab on YouTube. Thank you very much.